Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating story and the practical, everyday gardening of the magnificent Cucuzza. This is a wildly prolific Italian gourd that absolutely took the American South by storm. Look, if you've ever battled with zucchini in the dead of summer, only to watch it just totally succumb to the heat or the bugs, you are definitely going to want to pay close attention. We're talking about a plant today that practically thrives on neglect, grows at an absolutely astonishing rate, and carries a really rich, century-old heritage.
But, hey, before we get our hands dirty, let's define a term you've probably heard if you grew up around an Italian-American family: gagoots. Literally translated, it just means squash or gourd, specifically referring to the cucuzza. But as slang, it's affectionately used to call someone a lovable goofball, or maybe a bit of a numbskull who's just taking up space with nothing but air in their head. Honestly, it's a huge testament to how deeply ingrained this single vegetable is in the culture.
So here is our roadmap from seed to plate today. We're going to cover the great Sicilian gourd's history, starting your seeds, trellising monster vines, the art of hand pollination, knowing exactly when to harvest, and finally, prep and family recipes.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the Great Sicilian Gourd, and its 130-year heritage in the South.
The cucuzza's incredible journey really kicked off back in the 1890s. We saw a massive influx of Sicilian and Italian immigrants heading into places like Independence and Ruston, Louisiana, as well as parts of Arkansas. And when they arrived, they didn't just bring their culture with them, they brought their seeds. Those exact seeds have been passed down for over 130 years. Families like the Carderos up in Ruston have been commercially producing seeds that were originally brought over by their grandfather. It guarantees this beautifully drought-tolerant, resilient crop remains a living piece of history. I absolutely love this quote from the famous jazz legend Louis Prima. You might know him as King Louis in The Jungle Book, but back in 1959, he playfully dedicated an entire song to his sweetheart, Keely Smith, calling her his gagoots. It was a total term of endearment. That lyric, zucchini flavored with Italian charm, just hits the nail on the head. It captures the slightly sweet, nutty flavor of the cucuzza perfectly.
Moving on to Section 2, starting your seeds. We've got to prepare for the monster.
So how do we actually get these going? Well, the approach you take really depends on where you live. If you're up in a short-season climate like Zone 5, you'll want to start your seeds indoors about 4 to 5 weeks before your last frost date. For those of you in warmer climates, say Zone 6 and up, think Texas or Louisiana, you can just direct sow these right outside once that frost risk has totally passed. The absolute best practice here is to sow 2 seeds per 4-inch pot. Then, once they sprout, thin them out. You only want to leave the absolute strongest seedling. Give them a nice sunny spot, enrich that soil with some compost and organic vegetable fertilizer, and just get ready.
Now for Section 3, trellising the monster vines. And trust me, you are going to need to support some 30-foot giants.
10. That is the number of inches this vine can grow in a single day. Just think about that for a second. You can practically sit in a chair and watch it grow. A single vine can easily expand to 30, 50, or even 80 feet long over the course of a season. Seriously, one vine is going to provide more than enough food for an entire family for weeks. It is literally like a mini-universe expanding right there in your backyard. Because they grow so insanely fast and produce incredibly heavy fruit, you absolutely must, and I really cannot stress this enough, you must use a very sturdy trellis. Standard tomato cages, they're just going to instantly collapse under the weight. You want robust overhead structures, heavy-duty fences, or, and this is what some really clever gardeners do, you can just let the vines drape entirely over a chicken coop. Not only does the coop support all that weight, but those massive, soft, fuzzy leaves happily provide some much-needed shade for the chickens during those brutal summer heat waves.
So why is trellising completely non-negotiable? Well, if you let them sprawl out on the ground, they curl up, they hit random obstacles and twist around them, and they are incredibly prone to rotting on the moist earth. But letting them hang high on a trellis allows gravity to do all the hard work. It pulls the gourd straight down, creating that iconic, smooth, pale green baseball bat shape. Plus, honestly, it just makes finding them hidden beneath those massive leaves so much easier.
Section 4 is all about the art of hand pollination, a process old-school Italian gardeners affectionately call making a kiss.
First up, you've got to play matchmaker. Cucuzza vines produce these really beautiful white flowers that actually bloom at night or super early in the morning. To hand pollinate, you need to know the boys from the girls. The male flowers have a straight stem and a stamen covered in yellow pollen right inside. The female flowers, very easy to spot because they proudly display a tiny, distinct immature baby squash right between the stem and the base of the white petals.
Now, you could just wait around for nighttime insects to do the work, but let's be real, they aren't always perfectly efficient. To guarantee a massive harvest, you step in. In the morning or evening, simply pluck a male flower and peel back its white petals to expose the pollen. Find a fully open female flower, ideally on a completely different plant so we can mix those genetics, and gently brush the male stamen inside the female flower to transfer the pollen dust. Just a little kiss and boom, you've locked in a gourd.
Which brings us to Section 5, knowing when to harvest. After successful pollination, these gourds practically explode, and size absolutely matters.
Before you take a knife to the vine, you definitely want to use the fingernail test. Just press your thumbnail gently right into that pale green skin. If it easily leaves a clear little crescent moon imprint, your gourd is tender and perfectly ready for the kitchen. If it feels woody or rock hard and your nail doesn't leave a mark, you've waited a bit too long, and the skin is going to be way too tough to eat.
So what is the sweet spot? You're really aiming to harvest them when they're around 10 to 18 inches long. That's when the culinary quality is at its absolute peak, super tender with tiny, totally edible seeds. If you let them get to 30 or 36 inches, they are still good, but you're going to have to scoop out the larger seeds. And hey, what if you go on vacation for a week and come back to a 4-foot giant hanging from your trellis? Yeah, it's inedible, but don't throw it away. Let it dry out for a few months. The skin turns completely woody and you can harvest the seeds for next year or even use the dried gourd as a fun decorative craft or a rain stick.
All right, time to head out of the garden and into the kitchen for Section 6, Prep and Family Recipes. From vine to table.
Unlike zucchini, which easily turns into a watery, mushy mass if you overcook it, the cucuzza holds its firm white texture beautifully. But prepping it is a little different than your standard squash. Because that pale green skin is notably tougher, you absolutely must peel it with a vegetable peeler. Once it's peeled, trim the ends off, cut it in half lengthwise, and if you let it grow a bit too long, just grab a spoon and scoop out the larger, mature seeds right down the center. If it's a young gourd, those tiny seeds are perfectly fine to eat, no scooping required.
You can use this gourd interchangeably in literally any recipe that calls for summer squash, but traditional Italian-American families, they have their favorites. A total classic is Cucuzza con l'uovo, where it's fried up simply and beautifully with eggs. It's also incredible stewed down with olive oil, garlic, roasted tomatoes, and maybe some shrimp or sausage, and then poured right over pasta. And here is a massive pro tip. Do not throw away the vine. The incredibly soft, velvety leaves from the growing tips of the vine are called tenerumi. Traditional cooks boil these tender little leaves just like Swiss chard to make an incredibly rich, delicious pasta soup. Every single part of this plant gives back.
So here's the big question. Considering this plant completely ignores the brutal summer heat, laughs right in the face of the dreaded squash vine borer, and provides a massive abundance of delicious food and cultural heritage, are you ready to grow a cucuzza in your own garden next summer? I highly recommend you track down some seeds and experience this magnificent giant for yourself. Thanks for learning with me today, and happy growing!